Page 28. The know-it-all trickster. The bipolar shadow of the precocious child, like all the shadow forms of the archetypes of the immature masculine, can be carried over into adulthood, where it causes would-be men to manifest inappropriate infantilism in their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. The know-it-all trickster is, as the name implies, that immature masculine energy that plays tricks of a more or less serious nature in one's life and on others. He is expert at creating appearances and then quote-unquote selling us on those appearances. He seduces people into believing him, and then he pulls the rug out from under them. He gets us to believe in him, to trust him, and then he betrays us and laughs at our misery. He leads us to a paradise in the jungle, only to serve us a feast of cyanide. He's always looking for a sucker. He is the practical joker, adept at making fools of us. He is a manipulator. Page 29. The know-it-all is that aspect of the trickster in a boy or a man that enjoys intimidating others. The boy or man under the power of the know-it-all shoots off his mouth a lot. He's always got his hand up in class, not because he wants to participate in the discussion, but because he wants his classmates to understand that he is more intelligent than they are. He wants to trick them into believing that, compared to him, they are dolts. The boy possessed by the know-it-all, however, does not necessarily limit his exaggerated precociousness to intellectual showmanship. He may be a know-it-all about any subject or activity. A boy from a wealthy English family came to the United States one summer to spend a month in a YMCA camp. He spent much of his time telling the other boys, whom he called plebs, all about his many travels in Europe and Asia with his diplomat father. When the other boys asked about details of this or that foreign city, the English boy would respond with, "You stupid Americans! The only thing you know about is your cornfields." And he performed his "I'm superior to you" show in a British upper crust accent. Needless to say, the American boys felt ashamed and angry. The boy or man under the power of the know-it-all makes many enemies. He is verbally abusive of others, whom he regards as his inferiors. As a result, in grade school, he can often be found on the bottom of a pile of angry boys who are whacking away at him. He comes away from these encounters with black eyes, but with a defiant conviction of his own superiority. In one extreme case that we know of, the know-it-all boy came to believe that he was the second coming of Jesus Christ. The only thing he couldn't figure out was why no one seemed to recognize him. The know-it-all man, who is still possessed by his infantile shadow form of the precocious child, wears his superiority in his suspenders and in his business suits, carries it in his briefcase, and displays it in his "I'm too busy and too important to talk with you now" attitude. He's characteristically smug and often wears a cocky grin. He frequently dominates conversations, turning friendly discussions into lectures and arguments into diatribes. He depreciates those who don't know what he knows or who hold opinions that differ from his. Because page 30, because the trickster is the umbrella complex under which the know-it-all operates. The man caught in his infantile influence is usually deceiving others, and perhaps himself as well, about the depth of his knowledge or the level of his importance. But he is also but he also has a positive side. He is very good at deflating egos, our own and those of others. And often we need deflating. He can spot in an instant when and in exactly what that way we are inflated and identified with our grandiosity. And he goes for it in order to reduce us to human size and expose to us all our frailties. This was the role of the fool in the king's courts of medieval Europe. When everyone else at a great ceremony was adoring the king, and the king himself was beginning to adore the king, the fool would caper into the middle of the ceremonies and fart. He was saying, "Don't get inflated. All of us here are only human beings, no matter what status we accord each other." Jesus in the Bible calls Satan the father of lies, thus identifying Satan with the trickster in his negative aspect. However, in a roundabout way, the Bible also shows Satan, the trickster, in a positive light, though most of us have probably missed this. The story of Job, for instance, depicts a relationship of mutual respect between Job and God. God has given Job great wealth and material security, health, and a large family. Job, for his part, ceaselessly praises God. It's a mutual admiration society. Then in comes Satan, sniffing out the hypocrisy in the whole thing. He's a troublemaker for the sake of truth. His idea is that if God curses Job, Job will eventually stop singing the Lord's praises. God doesn't want to believe Satan, but he goes along with the plan, probably instinctively knowing that Satan is right. And he is. Once God has taken away everything Job had, his family, his wealth, his health, Job finally throws off his superficial piety, shakes his fist at God, and rips him up one side and down the other. God responds by intimidating Job. Even in the story of the Garden of Eden, Satan makes trouble for the sake of exposing the fraudulent and delusional nature of the supposedly quote-unquote good creation. God wanted to believe that everything he had made was good. But then, after all, he had made evil and hung it on the page 31. On the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Satan, in the form of the serpent, was determined to expose the shadow side of this quote-unquote all good creation. He succeeded through the quote-unquote fall of Adam and Eve. Only after Satan had exposed the evil in creation and, by implication, in the Creator, could honesty and healing begin. The young gang members in West Side Story, who in a clowning and trickish way tried to make excuses for themselves and their destructive behavior, to their mock-up of Officer Krupke, are actually and quite accurately exposing the shadow side, the less than idyllic side of the society that made them what they are. How does the trickster work? Let's say you are preparing to give what you regard as the most brilliant presentation of your life. You're so proud of your special insights. You sit down at the computer and order to print out the notes that you had them put into earlier. And the printer doesn't work. Your own inner trickster has tricked you. Or you're going to make an appearance at an important function. You're timing it so that you know everyone will be waiting for you. just for a few minutes, just long enough for them to realize how important you are. You go to the car at last, preparing to make your triumphal journey. You can't find your keys. There they are, locked in the car, still in the ignition. Hubris leads to nemesis. This is how the trickster works against, in the long run, perhaps, for us. But he works through us against others too. Maybe you're the practical joker, mercilessly hounding others with your pranks until someone does you one better and you are forced to realize how much it hurts. You're the car salesman who cheats your customers on the true markup of the car, and then management cheats you on your commission. We once knew a graduate student who was really possessed by this aspect of the archetype. He couldn't stop exposing others' weaknesses through his charming and not so charming humor at their expense. He laughed at his professor's blunders in the classroom. He laughed when the president of the school stumbled over his words. He himself had political aspirations, hoping to create a student movement for his favorite cause. But he alienated the very people he needed as supporters. Page 32. Supporters and mentors. His tricksterish behavior finally isolated him and left him powerless. It was only afterward, in therapy, when he had made himself familiar with the possessing force of this archetype, by studying Native American portrayals of the trickster, that he was able to free himself of his compulsive and self-destructive behavior. Perhaps the most familiar trickster is in the Bible, in the story of Jacob and Esau, and how Jacob got Esau's birthright through quote-unquote selling him a bowl of soup. Jacob tricked his older brother into giving up all his rightful status and wealth as the heir to their father's fortune. Through manipulation, he took what was not his. We need to clearly understand this immature energy, though its purpose in its positive mode seems to be to expose lies. If it is left unchecked, it moves into its negative side and becomes destructive of oneself and others. For the negative side of this immature masculine energy is really hostile and depreciating of all the real effort, all the rights, all the beauty of others. The trickster, like the high chair tyrant, does not want to do anything himself. He does not want to honestly earn anything. He just wants to be, and to be what he has no right to be. He is, in psychological language, passive aggressive. This is the energy form that seeks to the fall of great men, that delights in the destruction of a man of importance. But the trickster does not want to replace the man who has fallen. He does not want to take up that man's responsibilities. In fact, he doesn't want any responsibilities. He wants to do just enough to wreck things for others. The trickster causes a boy, or a boyish man, to have an authority problem. Such a boy or man can always find a man to hate him and eventually shoot him down. He will readily believe that all men in power are corrupt and abusive. But, like the man possessed by the weakling prince, he is condemned forever to be on the outskirts of life, never able to take responsibility for himself or his actions. His energy comes from envy. The less a man is in touch with his true talents and abilities, the more he will envy others. If we envy a lot, we are denying our own realistic greatness and our own divine child. What we need to do then is to get in touch with our own specialness, our own beauty, and our own creativity. Envy blocks creativity. The trickster is the archetype that rushes in to fill the vacuum in the page 33. In the immature man or boy, left by the boy's denial of and lack of connection with the divine child. The trickster gets activated developmentally within us when we have been depreciated and attacked by our parents or older siblings, when we have been emotionally abused. If we don't feel our real specialness, we will come under the power of the trickster, the quote-unquote know-it-all, and deflate others' sense of their specialness, even when such deflation is not called for. The know-it-all trickster has no heroes, because to have heroes is to admire others. We can only admire others if we have a sense of our own worthiness and a developing sense of security about our own creative energies. We'll take a little break here on page 33. To the next video, I'll be reading the subheading, The Dummy. And we're reading chapter 3, Boy Psychology, in the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover by Robert Moore and Doug Gillette. I encourage you to get the book yourself. Thank you for watching, folks. And young men, have a transformative week. We'll see you again real soon. Bye.